Hey, what's up, folks, and welcome to Game of Thrones Season 3, Episode 7 review. This is the episode review for The Bear and the Maiden Fair. I'm getting confused. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm intending to shoot some comic reviews after this, too. So, be on the lookout for that. But let's talk Game of Thrones, and yes, Kyle, I did take my glasses off again for this review, so I hope you're happy, brother man. But we are going to talk about this episode, which Martin stepped up to write, and this is a pretty good episode. In fact, it's quite a bit better than last week's episode, which was kind of a snooze fest, to be honest with you. A lot went on in this episode, and again, there's a lot of stuff in this that happened that, or one instance in particular that really made me hurt, which I'll get to shortly. But in the long run, this was a fucking good episode. Emphasis on a lot of fucking in this episode. I will probably start off with Jon. Yeah, let's start off with Jon, who's probably had the best character development in this episode as opposed to the rest of the season. We kind of decided to do something with him last season, and, now that's paying off a little bit. Majority of the time is a comparison of where we came from in between Jon and Ygritte. And there's this little bit of before I get it to Jon and Ygritte, I got to talk about Fuckface, who may be Rattleshirt or he may be Longspear. I'm not sure which, so my name of Fuckface will stick with him. There's a little bit of a confrontation in between him and Jon about FF cutting the cord out from under him, which Jon and Ygritte was dangling from last episode. We do get the motivation later on with a conversation in between FF and Ygritte that he's jealous of Jon. She's kissed by fire. He wants him, or he wants her, but she's kind of come to a point where she realizes that she genuinely does love Jon, and apparently this guy just can't accept that. And apparently, it seems that everybody in this episode is smarter than what they were depicted in the stories. A lot of people were starting to tell where Jon's loyalties are lying. Fuckface picks up on this. Tormund hasn't quite picked up on that yet. And that's kind of a sign that there may be trouble for them on down the road towards the end of the season. And in fact, this episode is pretty good, but it's still a lot of foreshadow building. And a lot of things going on here. But majority of the stuff in between Jon and Ygritte, besides they establish the fact that they love each other, is that Ygritte is disappointed in Jon's naivete of the world. He hasn't really gotten out, and he's lived a privileged life, especially for a bastard. But she's telling him, you don't know nothing of the wideness of the world. The way we live out here, and the things that we do. And she's kind of sitting there and, making fun of him, especially when Jon tells her for the fact that, it's considered a great honor for a nobleman's son to ride as a bannerman for his house. And, explaining about the drums that were going on, and Ygritte's just sitting there laughing and going, the drums are beating for rat-ta-ta-ta, or what the fuck ever land. And there's some funny stuff between them. We finally got Ygritte back in this episode, and not as the crazy Lorena Bobbitt, I'm going to cut your cock off and wear it as a necklace if you ever betray me, chick that was seen last episode. So it's nice to have this character back and, seeing stuff about why I remember I liked her from the stories in this, which is good. And then it kind of builds on a moment where Ygritte thinks she's coming off with the upper hand of experience in the world, and then there's a really good scene in between her and Jon when they come across a windmill that was built, and she's just absolutely fascinated by the building structure of it. And there's kind of a moment to where she realizes that maybe she doesn't know everything, and she doesn't know everything that she thinks Jon Snow doesn't know. And it's a really nice moment in between them, and I really enjoyed that about this. This is the best that I've seen for both of these characters for the season. And really good note to end on with them. Let's go over to Bran now. And in fact, I kind of thought about doing something crazy for this episode. You know, maybe singing the Bear and the Maiden Fair, opening up this episode. But my singing and my guitar playing are lamer than Bran Stark's legs. And most of this scene in between the Reeds, Bran, and Osha is kind of her having a tantrum about, just the situation that they're in. She agreed to carry the kid only so far, but it's kind of the typical, you know what, I'm going to fulfill my obligation, and then, you know what, we're done kind of story. And the kid is trying to emphasize the importance that he has to get north of the wall. He's got to meet this three-eyed crow and fulfill some kind of a destiny. And Asha kind of has a bit of a sad story that she shares about the husband, or the life partner that she used to have, who unfortunately fell victim to one of the White Walkers across the wall. And it's kind of telling them that there are going to be things that they heard about from some of their old man stories that they are going to encounter across the wall. There is a reason why some of the wildlings are fleeing the north, and going back there is just the equivalent of suicide. So it's... Osha's really upset about this, but Bran is saying, you know what, we've got to press on, we've got to do this, and that's pretty much the extent of the drama for this episode. Nice stuff, a little bit better than what we had with the trying to establish the alpha female from last episode. And Hodor's still there, and yeah, I gotta warn, spoilers in this. Only thing Hodor really has to say about this is his own name. I'd actually love to see a name-saying contest in between him and Pikachu, so yeah, there's that going on. We move to King's Landing now. Cersei is not really in this episode, and we sadly do not have the Queen of Thorns. Hey, we can't get all the good ones every week. But with this, there's another crack in there, and we start to kind of see Sansa acting like a little, or she's kind of becoming just a little bit smarter in this episode, but not by much. She's kind of sitting there and still weeping over the situation that she's in, that her and Tyrion are to be married to each other. She doesn't like this, and Tyrion's pretty upset, and I'll cover him and Bronn in a minute. But Sansa is getting a slight bit smarter, but not by much. And this character has had problems because of her naivete, and she's kind of reached a point to where, I've made a lot of bad decisions, and, I'm a stupid, naive girl, and I've basically been living on dreams that have been told to me for, all my life. And I can find her much more sympathetic in this than I can in the books, because at least the actress's performance is kind of conveying that I should feel sorry for her a little bit. And then that kind of gets broken a little bit. Marjorie's there with her while Sansa is pouring out her problems to her, and Sansa is getting told by Marjorie that maybe marrying Tyrion is not a bad thing. He hasn't mistreated you, and they're kind of sitting there and saying, well, maybe you should consider the benefit of this not being the knight in shining armor that you were looking for. There are a lot of things in the world that you're afraid to do, and that you should try some of them sometimes. And it's basically just her trying to spell out that, unfortunately, Sansa is still a maid. She hasn't had the range of experience that Marjorie has. And, she can kind of talk her through some things and learn. And that little bit of sympathy kind of gets broken when she asks the question of, all these things that women do, to please men sexually. Did you learn it from your mother? And Marjorie is just sitting there, and it's kind of, you feel sorry for somebody, but you just kind of, and then Marjorie just kind of sits there, puts Sansa's head on her shoulder and pats it, a bit, what's the word I'm looking for here? A little bit condescending, but still sympathetically condescending. And it's like, yeah, sure, my mother taught me. So even though it kind of ruined a little bit of, a good chance of Sansa getting a little bit smarter, it was still a nice moment to kind of break the lividity. So there is that to take away from it. Tyrion, meanwhile, is also having a lot of problems, especially with the fact that he's got to marry this young girl. Now, as it stands, you do get a better position from your father than what you were originally wanting, and Bronn kind of spells this out for him a little bit. But Tyrion is still a little apprehensive about it, and especially considering the fact that he's juggling his relationship with Shae on the side. Bronn kind of spells it out, and the idea that there was a friendship between them is kind of broken when Bronn sits there and kind of spells out that, you just pay me to kill people you don't like. Evil deeds are just something I do for free for you, which was a point of conversation that was brought up in between them, and it's pretty funny, but just kind of, if you were looking for a friendship to grow in between these two characters, that's about the extent of it. Bronn is only so much of a friend to Tyrion as what his pocketbook is full of, so. But, meanwhile, Tyrion also goes and he has a conversation with Shae, and he's trying to, lull her into where this is at. He's still a Lannister, and he has to perform his husbandly duties now once he gets married to Sansa, and Shae ain't having none of that. And Shae is just spelling out what their relationship is and all. If anything, I think it's kind of a sad point that Tyrion is trying to tell her otherwise, and he's not really fooling anybody but himself about that deal. He's trying to win her over. I bought you a gold necklace. And Shae's sitting there and looking at the reality of things and just realizes that what they hope to have just can never be. And I really feel bad for the little guy on that. And Shae is kind of a character that I've come to like with a little bit that we've seen of her in the last couple of seasons. So that is a little bit of a disappointment there for anybody that's kind of grown attached to these characters. And I'm kind of whisking my way through this. Joffrey and Tywin is a rather awkward conversation, although not entirely awkward for us watching. It's just, which I'm surprised that nothing was ever brought up from last episode about, well, it was kind of brought up. It's not mentioned about the servant girl that he murdered from last episode when he decided to use her as a crossbow target. But apparently he elicited some information from her about the Targaryen girl down in the pseudo-Arabian islands of Westeros here. And Tywin wants to know how he knows about that, but the kid's trying to assert himself as, being a smarter king. He's not happy with the fact that his grandfather is kind of pulling strings on him behind the scenes. And his grandfather's sitting there and trying to keep control of the situation as best Tywin Lannister can. But Tywin knows that he's not going to be able to keep this kid down forever. This kid is getting older and he's getting smarter, and Marjorie has been kind of pushing him in a direction, kind of awakened a sense of, I've got to be a little bit more of a man. Not in a good way, but, the kid realizes that he needs to have control of his kingdom, and as it fucking stands, he doesn't right now. And that's basically what this amounts to in this episode. For right now, Tywin has control of the situation, but Joffrey is, looking up the ladder, and he's trying to work his way back up into being the top in King's Landing. So there is that. Still an interesting scene, kind of awkward, but it's there, it's eating up time. Then we travel over to, let's go to Arya, who unfortunately is still upset about the loss of Gendry and the betrayal by the Brotherhood Without Banners selling Gendry out to Melisandre. She is fucking upset about this, and I don't blame the kid one bit. We get a little bit of a religious debate going in between them. about the gods that they serve, and she's kind of upset with basically this conversation in between her and Beric is tantamounting to the fact that the god Roller plays favorites, and the one that she decides to serve does not, which is death. And Beric is not entirely pleased by what he hears about the situation. After this conversation happens, there is an opportunity that presents itself. They decide to go after some of the Lannister bannermen, and Arya takes this as an opportunity to escape because, Beric is telling her he'll keep his word and get her to Casterly Rock or somewhere safe, and we just have to make a slight detour, and Arya's not happy about this, and given all the developments that have happened in front of her over the last few episodes, I can't entirely blame her for wanting to run. Unfortunately, this proves to be a poor decision on her part, particularly because that she runs into the fucking Hound at the end of her little segment. And kind of a bad situation running into him. What's going to happen exactly? We don't know. Well, I do know, but I'm not going to say. So, kind of a bad situation. Nicely handled there, and just all-around good scene for the 5 minutes that it takes up. Then we move to the outside of King's Landing with a little conversation in between Melisandre and Gendry. Now, I've gotten over the sharp twist in plot that was done last episode, which didn't happen in the books, but you know what? I'm over it. Basically, Melisandre gives Gendry the startling revelation that he is, in fact, Robert Baratheon's bastard son, and that, in a sense, that he is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne right now. But Melisandre also has a scheme up her sleeve. It said that there is power in King's blood, and by very much mentioning that, if you know what happened with Stannis' kids, that Melisandre did with them, this ain't looking good for Gendry. That's all I can spell out for that. Very nice scene, and I really felt bad for the kid when he finds out what actually happened to him. And kind of playing a dangerous game a little bit, riding that close to the Battle of Blackwater, the aftermath of it. Because you're right outside King's Landing, and it's just a very dangerous place to be right now. Not the smartest decision on Melisandre's part to be riding around it, but still an interesting scene nevertheless. Then we move on to, let's see, Theon. Okay, there's three things I've left to talk about. Let's talk about Theon first, because god damn did this hurt to watch. We're still in the process of torturing Theon. Now, I've said it before and I've said it again, this torture shit has got to stop with him. Now, I understand they're trying to fill in some plots from a book which came out very recently from the Game of Thrones series. Trying to fill in what's happening with him, so that's got to eat up some time. And I was feeling sorry for this guy, and then now I'm horrified for him, and I'm just kind of begging the producers at HBO to stop fucking torturing this guy. Jesus. What happens with this episode is that Theon gets another visit, and this time it's from, surprisingly enough, two very attractive nymphonic women. And they've come there to kind of coddle him into a state of ease so that a certain type of torture can be rendered upon him. Basically, the long part of this episode, and what I can say to Theon's credibility, despite the shit that he's been through, is that he's not buying it. Now, he has two women, one of them straddling him, and because they make a big deal about, they say that the great Theon Greyjoy's cock is, the greatest thing, and we want to see it. And they're trying to get a rise out of him, metaphorically and literally, and it's working, but Theon's not entirely happy with the situation because he knows he's being fucked with. And at least if anything, besides the fact that I'm feeling sorry for this character now at this point, it's also a credibility to his intelligence that he kind of recognizes that it's is something bad that's going to happen. He just doesn't know how bad. And then his captor comes in there. And the women serve their purpose. And let's just say that Theon, he thought himself great at one time, and then he became a peon when he was being tortured the last few episodes. Now poor Theon has gone from a heon to a sheon. And fortunately they didn't show the fixing of this poor bastard. But Jesus, I mean, there's just a lot of shock value in this, and there's been at least something, if not every episode, every other episode, to make me cringe. And congratulations, Game of Thrones, you made me manage to just crinkle my back up, and the hair is standing up on the back of my neck, and I don't want to think about that. It's terrible. I'm fucking horrified for this guy. You know, I've seen a lot of shit that he's done. You know, granted, he's done a lot of bad things, but I mean, still, this is way past what he deserves for what he's done. So yeah, let's move on from that. God. Let's go over to Daenerys. Now, Daenerys, this is picking back up better. The one marked improvement that I can say upon this season, at least, is that she's being done so much better, and there's a lot more interesting stuff happening around her. She sets her eyes on the city of Yunkai, which is a heavily walled city in the lands that she's passing through. She's actually taken a sharp detour, and instead of making a roll for the land of Westeros, she is going around as a slave liberator. Basically, Jorah fills her in with the fact that Yunkai has over 200,000 slaves in it, and she's absolutely motivated. You know what? We've got to take out the city. We've got to liberate these people. So we have a little bit of a meeting of royalty in between either, I think this is the king or perhaps an emissary of Yunkai, and Daenerys. Now, Daenerys, throughout this, as she's built up her army and she finally came into being the queen last episode, is conducting herself very regally. She's got the language of these very high people down pat, and she also shows that she's very in control of the situation. She's got her dragons around her, and the guy is terrified. You know what? We're trying to make some peace offerings. She actually sent Grey Worm to the city gates and says, hey, either you're going to surrender to me, or I'm going to come in there and kill every one of you highborn people to liberate these slaves. So the little emissary comes riding down there, and he brings chests of gold, and there's a little bit of an exchange in between them about what happens, and you know what? The emissary is not happy. And he says, you know what, if you want fucking blood, you're going to have blood if you want this. Otherwise, we're trying to offer you gold. Hell, we'll even give you a ship or as many ships as you need to go to Westeros if you just leave us the fuck alone. Dany is a woman of principle, and she's very much set her eyes on liberating a lot of the people in this land, and that's what she's going to do. And this guy, for a little bit, his anger gives him courage, and it almost causes him to lose a hand to one of the dragons. And it's kind of exposed that even though these guys have got a lot of protection going, they're still just fucking shitless. Scared shitless. And Dany says, you know what? We'll give you war. And the dude tells the slaves to start taking back the gold. But she's like, You threatened me. You threaten my court, and you threaten my dragons, and the dragons know when their mother is being threatened. You gave this gold to me, and it belongs to me now. So you better go and give you the gift I gave you, which is your life, and enjoy it while you still can. And, you know, it's kind of reinforcing that Dany is in control of the situation, but I'm still enjoying this. I really enjoyed what's going on with her, and basically right now is just her and Jorah and Barristan trying to figure out how they're going to get into the city and liberate these people now. The gauntlet has pretty much been dropped after this encounter, and war is definitely coming to the city of Yunkai. Now, Before I get to the tail end of this episode, which is sort of the title uh, scene of this episode, I almost forgot Robb Stark. Robb in this is kind of an idiot. This is kind of a point where I'm thankful, after establishing this, that he doesn't have a point of view in the books. Robb, up until about halfway through this season, has been making some very poor decisions. Well, he's been making decisions in the right about men taking revenge and going against his orders, and about how he's handling the situation with his mother. He's done right on that. But then he's made the bad decision of deciding to go to the twins to get men to replace the Karstarks after the fallout in between them and the King of the North. Basically, it tantamounts to he's not really in control of his own court. In fact, two of his advisors are actually giving him shit about this. Edmure is one of them, who's not happy about the fact that he's being used as a bargaining chip in an arranged marriage to one of Walder Frey's daughters. And there's another guy who's sitting right there, and he's doing very well at trying to play off subtly how stupid that he thinks his king is, and about how much of a privileged little bitch that Robb Stark's wife is. But she does pretty well at holding her own against this guy in the War of Words. But it's an interesting little scene. And then we need to backtrack a little bit. Basically, this is still spelling out that, this is going to blow up in your faces. Since Robb Stark's decision to go to the Freys after the slight against this man whose daughter he was supposed to marry, this is like lighting a gunpowder trail to a big keg, and it's going to blow up in his face. The problem is that it's a very long line, or a very slow burning fuse, and it's just been kind of a long way of getting to the end of it. But this is still a stupid decision. And this also becomes even more complicated. Now, there's a scene in between Robb and his wife later on in the tent. He's still intent on going and asking the Freys, which is the honorable thing to do, because my father would do that. And then his wife drops the revelation that she is now pregnant with his child. And, which, by the way, there's a very nice shot of her ass, and which apparently the cameraman decided to spend about a good 7 or 8 minutes on the shot of Jaime Westerling's bum in this episode, which I'm not complaining about. But at least ideally is that as it kind of curves out, this is going to be something that really come back and bite them in that in the butt. I'm still thinking about Jaime Westerling's ass. I'm trying to stay focused. Robb is still making a poor decision, and he's probably going to go there and feel so compelled to tell the good news about this. My wife, this is my wife, and she's expecting our first child. And this is something that's just going to blow up in his face. And this line of thinking about going to the Freys has just been very dumb to begin with. And it's a stupid idea. I mean, I'm sitting there watching this, and there's a lot of people that are sitting there and thinking Robb Stark is fucking Robb Stark, and he's just making this fucking stupid decision to go to the twins. I mean, it's bad enough you gonna go there and tell the man whose daughter that you spurned, I need some more men. And the fact is that this wife that you spurned his daughter for is now carrying a child. Gonna blow up in your face. I'm telling you this, man. And that's it. That's it for him. Really, that's the best thing about this episode is Robb Stark's wife's ass. And then we get to the scene with Jaime and Brienne at the end of this episode. Now, this is the title of why it's called The Bear and the Maiden Fair. If anybody knows the song, George decides to go and play out that song in kind of a sadistic way. There's a very nice scene in between Jaime and Brienne as Jaime is getting ready to leave King's Landing and be escorted, or actually leave Harrenhal and be escorted back to King's Landing. Yeah, I'm taking a look here. I am on 30 minutes now with this episode. Yeah. So, anyways, he's getting ready to leave King's Landing, or head back to King's Landing. And there's a nice moment in between him and Brienne where Brienne kind of comes to respect him now. And it's a really good thing. She refers to him as Jaime, and Jaime kind of takes a moment to sit there and, just be genuinely touched by the fact that someone decided to refer to him by his name and not as Kingslayer. And I really enjoyed that. And then he's kind of sitting there riding away, and then one of the guys escorting him, actually also the medic who was tending to a stump, Qyburn actually filled him in, that Bran is being left behind to be some entertainment for the men at Harrenhal. And unfortunately, they decide, he sits there and says, that song, The Bear and the Maiden Fair? Guess who the Maiden's going to be? And it's basically a pit with a bear in it, and all the men at Harrenhal are going to watch her be mauled to death by this bear. And they gave her this freaking wooden sword to defend herself with, and she's taken a beating from this animal thus far. I know that this is a television show, but there's also kind of a point where this is a big fucking grizzly bear. And he's taking a good couple of swipes at her, and she should be holding her jugular in after it looked like it'd been severed, but, she's still kicking. Jaime comes riding back to the place, and he actually fills in the guy that he was with, I need to go back and get her. And it's like, no. I was told to escort you there. Alright, well, think about this. Alright, my dad is the shoot the messenger kind of guy. I can sit there and tell him anything and he'll believe it. I could tell him that either you were the man who helped get me here, or I could tell him that you were the man who cut off my fucking hand. And the guy decides to wise up and take Jaime back to Harrenhal. And Jaime selflessly, probably for the first time in his life in a long time, he decides to do something selfless and go and rescues Brienne from the bear. Then there's kind of this scene where actually Locke, or the dude who was supposed to be Vargo Holt, I don't know why we ain't referring to him by his name, but he doesn't like Jaime, and reluctantly he realizes that his boss would be pissed if something happened to Jaime, so he goes and he helps Jaime and Brienne up out of the pit. And after that really good scene in between Jaime and Brienne, because, that bond that had been kind of forming has now come together, they respect each other, and they're on even terms now. Then the episode, it kind of ends right here, and it's not without some disappointment that I say this. Jaime leaves, and he's looking at the Locke character, and he just says, you know what, your boss wouldn't be happy if nothing happened to me, and I'm getting her out of here, and you can try and kill me, and answer to him, and then answer to my father later. And it's kind of reluctant, but the asshole decides to let him go. And this is where my disappointment comes in, because you really got to not liking this guy, and I kind of wish that at least, this episode didn't end on a cliffhanger, which I was a little disappointed by, because this would have been a perfect opportunity to end it on a cliffhanger at. But if not that, you could have at least gone and pushed the guy over into the fucking bear pit, at least for cutting off your hand. And that's why I say that this episode came off a little bit disappointing. But still, it was a good scene, and it established, that Jaime and Brienne are kindred spirits now. They do respect each other, and dare I say, they're even becoming friends at this point. In short, with this scene, it's good that we're establishing finally that there is a bond in between Jaime and Brienne, and that it's realized. But I'm really disappointed with the fact that this episode couldn't have ended on a good cliffhanger, or that he at least could not have gotten some kind of satisfaction or retribution for this guy for cutting off his hand and just pushed him over into the fucking bear pit. But I've rambled on long enough about this episode. This episode in the long run, it was better. There's a lot better things that happened. as compared to the fucking snooze fest that was last episode. I'll throw out a Star Trek reference. Last episode was the motion picture. It was mostly boring, would have put you to sleep. This episode, you might think I would say Wrath of Khan. No, this one is at least, a voyage home. There's some funny stuff in it, and there's just a lot of good stuff going on in it, but it's not without its disappointments. A lackluster ending, which I'm sorry to say, and some characters still doing some particularly stupid things, particularly Rough Darkid. You know what? A lot of things just going to blow up in the face. Good stuff happening here, but mostly foreshadowing still for probably a bang-out season finale. But there is still some good stuff in here, and there is the realization, almost a little too late now that we're over the halfway point of this season, that characters like Jon Snow and Ygritte have finally become characters, and characters that I'm happy to invest with. Overall, this was a pretty good episode in the long run, and I do give this pretty good props for the most part. Martin did write a good episode. And that shall do it for my review of Game of Thrones for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed my analysis. I kind of yacked my way through it, but hey, it's over and done with. I will catch you guys next week with the episode. I think Cold Hands should be the next one, so until then, I will catch you guys later. Valor Morgulus, motherfucker.